In another world, in another time, things went very different in Westeros. The story we all know, about Robert Baratheon winning the war and sitting on the Iron Throne, never happened. This is the story of what happened when King Aerys, II Targaryen, known as the Mad King, won the war. It all started when Robert's rebellion was just getting stronger. Robert Baratheon, Eddard Stark, Jon Arryn, and many others were fighting against the king because of his cruelty. But in this world, the Mad King was ready. He was not the crazy old fool everyone thought he was. He was dangerous, and he had a plan. King Aerys called for wildfire, a dangerous green fire that burns everything. He ordered his pyromancers to fill the city of King's Landing with thousands of jars of wildfire. The whole city became a death trap for anyone who tried to attack him, but that was not enough for him. He sent messages to the Lannisters early. He promised Tywin Lannister gold, land, and even the title of Hand of the King if he betrayed Robert's rebellion. In this world, Tywin didn't wait on the side. He joined the Mad King from the start. Then the biggest shock came. Prince Rhaegar, Targaryen, who many believed would go against his father, decided to support the Mad King. Why? Because Rhaegar believed that after the war he could control his father and rule Westeros in a better way. Now Robert Baratheon was in trouble. His armies were fighting not just the royal army but also the Lannisters. They were outnumbered, outsmarted, and trapped. The Battle of the Trident, where Robert killed Rhaegar in the original story, ended very differently here. In this world, Robert reached the Trident River with his army, tired and with low food. But waiting for him were not just Rhaegar's men. The Lannisters had come too. Robert fought like a lion. His hammer broke many shields and bones. But in the end, numbers matter. The royal army surrounded him from all sides, and with a rain of arrows, Robert Baratheon fell. The rebellion lost its heart. Eddard Stark was heartbroken. His best friend, his brother-in-arms, was gone. But Ned did not give up. He gathered what men he had left and started moving north, trying to reach Winterfell and save his family. But the Mad King was not done. He sent Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, after Eddard Stark. With no big army left, Ned was forced to surrender. He was captured like a common criminal. His dream of a free and peaceful Westeros ended in chains. Jon Arryn was surrounded in the Vale. He knew he could not win. To save his family and his people, he bent the knee to the Mad King. The war was over. The Iron Throne stayed red, not from its iron, but from the blood of rebels. King Aerys ordered a grand celebration in King's Landing, but it was not a happy time for the people. Fear ruled every street. Every house stayed quiet. No one wanted to speak against the king, because spies were everywhere. On the day of Robert Baratheon's execution, the Mad King sat on his throne, laughing like a demon. He ordered that Robert's body be burned in front of the Red Keep using wildfire, so everyone could see what happens to traitors. Ned Stark and many other rebel leaders were kept alive, not out of mercy, but so they could watch their loved ones die first. Rhaegar, watching all this, stayed quiet. His face showed no happiness. He knew his father had gone too far, but it was too late now. Blood had already covered Westeros. In the north, Winterfell was left without its lord. Ned Stark's family, Catelyn, Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and baby Rickon, were all now under the eyes of the king's soldiers. The south was no better. The Stormlands were destroyed. The Tullys of Riverrun were forced to surrender. Dorne stayed silent, waiting for its time. The whole realm belonged to the Mad King now. But a dark future was waiting. Aerys became even more mad after the war. His paranoia grew every day. He stopped trusting even Rhaegar. He kept thousands of jars of wildfire hidden in the city, ready to burn it down if anyone tried to betray him. Westeros had become a land of fear, of blood, of fire. But as we know, when a king rules with madness and fire, shadows start to gather. Whispers started. In dark halls, people said, "This king will burn us all." Others said, "Maybe Prince Rhaegar will save us." And in the cold lands of the north, there were still wolves waiting. The war was over, but the Game of Thrones was not. The war was over, but peace never came to Westeros. The Mad King had won, but his victory was dark, cruel, and full of blood. After Robert Baratheon's death at the Battle of the Trident, the news spread fast across the Seven Kingdoms. People were shocked. They believed Robert was the only man strong enough to defeat the Mad King. His hammer was silent now. His rebellion had failed. But what happened to the rebels after the war was even worse than death. The first to suffer was Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Ned was brought to King's Landing in chains like a criminal. His face was hard, but his heart was broken. He had lost his best friend Robert. He had lost the war, and now he feared for his family in the north. The Mad King was waiting for him in the Red Keep. Aerys sat on his iron throne, smiling like a devil. "You wanted to rise against your king," Aerys whispered. "Now you will watch everything you love burn." Ned Stark was not executed immediately. No, the Mad King wanted him to suffer more. He ordered that Ned be kept alive in the dungeons. Every day a guard would come and tell him about new horrors. One day, Ned was told that his father, Rickard Stark, who had already been burned alive in the original timeline, was now called a traitor again. The Stark name was cursed. Winterfell was taken by the king's soldiers. The northern lords were forced to bend the knee or lose their families. Catelyn Stark was placed under house arrest with her children, Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon. The north had become a cage. But it wasn't just the Starks who suffered. Jon Arryn, the wise lord of the Vale, knew he could not win any more. He bent the knee to the Mad King to save his people, but even then the king didn't trust him. Jon was forced to send young Robert Arryn, his sickly son, to King's Landing as a hostage. The Mad King knew how to control people, take their children. House Tully of Riverrun was treated the same. Catelyn's father, Hoster Tully, had to send his younger son Edmure as another royal hostage. The Reach stayed quiet. The Tyrells had never truly joined the rebellion. They were smart. They sent gifts and gold to the Mad King after his victory. But Dorne was different. Prince Doran Martell stayed silent. But deep down, Dorne hated the Mad King for what happened to Elia Martell, Rhaegar's wife. She had been left alone while Rhaegar went to war. Many believed Elia would try to use her children, Rhaenys and baby Aegon, to survive in a world ruled by madness. But the worst fate was for House Baratheon. Storm's End, the mighty castle of Robert's family, fell to the royal army. Stannis, Baratheon, Robert's younger brother, refused to surrender. He fought bravely but had no chance. His walls were broken, his soldiers killed, and he was dragged in chains to King's Landing. The Mad King hated Stannis for his loyalty to Robert, but instead of killing him quickly, he made him watch the destruction of his house. Renly Baratheon, Robert's youngest brother, was just a boy. The king spared him, but only to keep him as a hostage too. Now the Seven Kingdoms were under the iron grip of Aerys. People could not even speak the names of Robert Baratheon, Ned Stark, or Jon Arryn without fear. To do so meant death. The small folk of Westeros whispered in the dark streets. "The king has gone mad beyond saving," they said. "We live in the time of fire and blood." Meanwhile, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was deeply troubled. He knew this was not the victory he had hoped for. His father was burning the realm piece by piece. Rhaegar had wanted to rebuild Westeros after the war. He had dreamed of peace. But now, the Iron Throne sat on bones. Rhaegar visited Eddard Stark in the dungeons once. "I am sorry," Rhaegar said. His voice was quiet, but Ned Stark, the wolf of Winterfell, looked at him with cold eyes. "Sorry will not bring back my people," Ned said. "Sorry will not save this kingdom." Rhaegar left, knowing that his father had created enemies everywhere. Even loyal houses like the Lannisters began to worry. Tywin Lannister was rich, powerful, and smart, but he knew that a king who ruled with madness would one day turn on his friends too. In the Red Keep, King Aerys continued his evil plans. He ordered the building of more wildfire bombs. He filled the city with spies. He killed maesters who questioned him. He even began to talk about marrying young girls to himself, even if they were promised to his son, Rhaegar. No one was safe. Fear was the new king in Westeros. But in the far north at Winterfell, something was happening. Robb Stark, still young but brave, was watching. He saw what the South had done to his family. He promised himself that one day the North would rise again. And in Dorne, Prince Doran and Elia Martell were also waiting for the right time, waiting for revenge. The war was over. But a new storm was coming. Westeros was silent. The war was over. The rebels were defeated. The Mad King sat on the Iron Throne, more powerful than ever. But not everyone was happy with this victory. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, the son of King Aerys, was standing at a crossroads of life. His heart was heavy. His dreams of peace were broken. His father had won the war, but the price was too high. Everywhere Rhaegar went in King's Landing, he saw fear in the eyes of the people. The small folk walked with their heads down. The streets were quiet. No music, no laughter, only silence. This was not the future Rhaegar had dreamed of. He remembered the days before the war. He loved singing songs, reading ancient books, and learning about prophecy. He believed he was the prince that was promised, a hero who would save the world from darkness. But now, he was a prince living in a kingdom full of ashes. His father, King Aerys, had lost his mind completely. He stayed in the Red Keep day and night, whispering to himself about fire, dragons, and betrayal. He trusted no one, not even Rhaegar. Aerys even began to watch his own son with suspicious eyes. He believed that Rhaegar was too popular, too loved by the people. And in the Mad King's mind, that was a threat. Meanwhile, Rhaegar was caught in another problem: Lyanna Stark. In this world, Lyanna had not died. She was still alive, hidden away in the Tower of Joy. Rhaegar had kept her there during the war for safety. But now the war was over, and her fate was uncertain. He loved her, but because of her, the war had started. Robert Baratheon was dead. The Starks were destroyed. The realm was bleeding. Was this love worth all this pain? One night, Rhaegar visited Lyanna at the Tower of Joy. Lyanna was angry. She had heard what had happened to her brother, Eddard Stark. She knew her family was suffering in the dungeons of King's Landing. "You said you would protect me," Lyanna whispered to Rhaegar. "But you didn't protect my family." Rhaegar stood there, silent. What could he say? He had lost control of everything. "I never wanted this war," Rhaegar said finally. "I never wanted blood. I wanted peace. I wanted to change the world." Lyanna looked at him with sad eyes. "Then why am I locked away like a prisoner?" she asked. "Why is my brother in chains? Why does your father still sit on that cursed throne?" Rhaegar had no answer. He left the Tower of Joy that night with a heart full of guilt and regret. In King's Landing, things were getting worse. The Mad King was now talking about burning every city that even whispered about rebellion. He sent soldiers to every corner of Westeros. He told them to crush the spirit of the people. He sent new orders to Winterfell. Robb Stark, just a young boy, was to be taken to King's Landing as another hostage. The North was not trusted anymore. Eddard Stark was furious when he heard this. He begged Rhaegar to stop this madness. "Your father is killing the future of this kingdom," Ned said. "If you don't stop him, there will be nothing left to rule." Rhaegar listened. He knew Ned was right. He also knew that the lords of Westeros were scared, but they were also angry. Angry people are dangerous. In the shadows of the Red Keep, secret letters were flying. Lords who had once bent the knee out of fear were now writing messages to each other. Jon Arryn in the Vale, Hoster Tully in the Riverlands, Doran Martell in Dorne. Even Tywin Lannister was beginning to think, if the Mad King could betray his own son one day, then what about his allies? Everyone was waiting for a spark, something to start a new rebellion. And in the middle of this storm stood Rhaegar Targaryen. He had to make a choice. Would he continue to serve his mad father, or would he risk everything, even his life, to save the kingdom from turning into ashes? Rhaegar knew that if he challenged his father, it would be the most dangerous thing he had ever done. But he also knew something else. If he didn't act soon, Westeros would burn. Every day, Rhaegar visited the royal court. He listened to his father talk about burning Winterfell, killing the Starks, destroying the Vale, and ruling with fire and fear. And every day, Rhaegar's heart became heavier. The Song of Ice and Fire was not about love anymore. It was about survival. It was about saving the people from a dragon who had gone mad. One night, standing alone in the great hall of the Red Keep, Rhaegar looked at the Iron Throne. He whispered to himself, "This throne was never made for peace. It was made for war." And in that moment, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen knew what he had to do. He had to become the man who would save Westeros, even if it meant fighting his own blood, even if it meant dying. Because sometimes the greatest enemy of all is your own family. The sun still rose every day over Westeros, but the land no longer smiled under its light. With the Mad King sitting on the Iron Throne, the kingdom was no longer alive. It was only breathing in fear. Every city, every house, every village had changed. Lords walked with their heads low. Common people whispered only in silence. The king's spies were everywhere, and behind every whisper there was a blade waiting in the dark. In King's Landing, the Red Keep had become a prison. The dungeons were full, not just of rebels, but of people who had simply spoken the wrong word. A baker who said he missed the days of Robert Baratheon. A soldier who asked if Prince Rhaegar would be a better king. A child who accidentally burned a coin with the king's face on it. All of them disappeared, and the ones who stayed alive wished they hadn't. The Mad King had turned the capital into a city of ashes, not by fire but by fear. Every street had banners of the dragon. Every tower had guards. Every night the smell of wildfire filled the air. The king's pyromancers were working day and night. They created more and more jars of wildfire hidden all around the city, under houses, under markets, even under the Sept of Baelor. The king believed that if anyone tried to rise again, he would burn the entire city to the ground. Not even Rhaegar knew where all the wildfire was, and that scared him more than anything. The prince now lived in silence, his heart heavy with guilt and anger. He saw what his father was doing, but he was not yet ready to strike. He needed allies. He needed time. And time was running out. In the north, Winterfell was under the control of royal soldiers. Robb Stark had been taken from his family and sent to the capital. He was just a boy, but even at that age his eyes were cold and full of fire. He did not cry. He did not scream. He only watched and remembered. Sansa and Arya stayed with their mother, Catelyn. The Stark family was watched day and night. They could not write letters. They could not leave their land. Even the ravens that flew from Winterfell were stopped and checked. The Mad King feared the North the most. He believed that one day the wolves would rise again. In the Vale, Jon Arryn played a dangerous game. Outwardly, he acted loyal. He paid taxes to the crown. He sent his young son to King's Landing as a sign of peace. But secretly, Jon was angry, furious. He had raised Robert and Ned like his own sons, and now one was dead, and the other lived like a slave. In his heart, Jon planned rebellion, but he knew that any mistake could cost thousands of lives. So he waited, quietly, smartly. In Dorne, the fires of revenge had started to burn again. Elia Martell, still alive, had been pushed aside by the court after the war. She had watched her husband Rhaegar fall in love with Lyanna Stark. She had watched her name lose honor, but now she had power again, because of her children. Rhaenys and young Aegon were still seen as heirs to the throne. The Mad King didn't trust them, but he kept them close. Elia used this chance to speak to her brother, Prince Doran of Dorne. They sent letters through trusted riders, speaking of the king's madness and the need for change. Dorne never forgot its pride. And Dorne never forgave betrayal. Meanwhile, the Riverlands were dry and dying. The people there had supported the rebellion. Now they paid for it with high taxes, burned farms, and missing sons. Lord Hoster Tully tried to keep order, but the people were broken. Many young men were taken by the crown and never returned. The people began to call this time the Long Silence. It was a time when songs stopped being sung, when fires were lit not for warmth but for warnings, when even the stars at night looked down in sadness. Back in King's Landing, Prince Rhaegar met secretly with Sir Arthur Dayne and Sir Oswell Went, his most trusted Kingsguard. He told them of his fears. "My father is killing the realm slowly," he said. "If we wait too long, there will be nothing left to save." "But if we act too soon," Sir Arthur warned, "we could lose everything." Rhaegar nodded. He knew what he needed. Not just swords, but stories. He needed people to believe in. Him. Not as the son of the Mad King, but as the prince who would break the fire. So he sent secret messages to the Vale, to the north, to Dorne, even to the Riverlands. He asked them not for armies, not yet. He asked them for hope. "Tell your people," he wrote, "that a better day is coming. Tell them not all Targaryens are mad." In the shadows of the Red Keep, another figure was moving. Varys, the Spider, the Whisper Master of the realm. Varys had served the Mad King, but he had seen what kind of king he truly was. And now he watched Rhaegar. Varys saw a future not ruled by fire and fear, but by balance. He began to speak in the ears of the court. He planted the seed. What if Rhaegar ruled? The kingdom was chained, but chains break, and when they do, the noise they make can shake the world. King Aerys still sat on the Iron Throne, but he was no longer ruling Westeros. He was simply holding it down with fear and fire, and when a king rules with fear alone, the people begin to whisper. Whispers turn to rumors. Rumors turn to messages. And slowly, across the 7 kingdoms, the winds of rebellion began to blow again. It started quietly. In the Vale, Jon Arryn began meeting in secret with trusted bannermen. He kept his voice low and his words careful, but his eyes were sharp. He knew the realm was ready to burn, but this time they needed a smarter plan. They had learned from the last war. Rushing with swords was not enough. Now they needed patience, alliances, and a leader. Not Robert. He was dead. Not Ned Stark. He was chained, but there was one man they could look to, Prince Rhaegar. At first, many didn't trust him. He was the son of the Mad King. He had fought against the rebels. He had stood beside his father while thousands died. But then the letters came. Quiet, hidden, careful letters, written by Rhaegar himself. He told the truth. He had stayed with his father during the war because he believed he could calm him down after victory. But he had failed. And now he saw clearly. His father was not just mad. He was a danger to all of Westeros. He promised something better. A realm with peace. A realm without fear. A realm where families like the Starks, the Tullys, and the Baratheons could return to honor. The letters changed minds. Jon Arryn began to believe. So did Hoster Tully, who had lost so much in the war. So did Doran Martell, who wanted justice for Elia. And even in the north, whispers found their way into Winterfell. Catelyn Stark read one such message late at night. She held it in shaking hands, her eyes full of hope and fear. It simply said, "Your children will not grow up in chains. The fire will die. RT." But the rebellion could not start with letters alone. They needed action. They needed a plan. Rhaegar began meeting secretly with Sir Arthur Dayne, Sir Oswell Whent, and Varys. He created a small group, people he could trust. They met in the old tunnels under the Red Keep, where the walls did not have ears. There, they spoke of the impossible. "If we act, it must be fast," Sir Arthur said. "The wildfire is everywhere. If your father thinks he's losing, he will burn the city." "Then we need to take the city from within," Rhaegar answered. "No open war, no bells, just shadows." Varys smiled, his thin fingers tapping on the table. "Then you will need someone who knows how to move in the dark." And so, Varys began his work. He sent messages to his little birds, spies, orphans, and beggars. He told them to watch the pyromancers, the guards, and the courtiers. He gathered secrets, weak spots, and safe paths. Meanwhile, Rhaegar started winning the hearts of the people. Quietly, he began walking among the small folk, dressed as a common man. He helped an old woman carry water. He played music in the streets. He listened to the stories of those who had suffered, and they began to whisper again. But this time, not with fear. This time, they said, "Maybe the prince is not like his father." In Dorne, Elia Martell sent word to her brother. "The people believe again," she wrote. "They believe in him, just give the order." But Rhaegar was still waiting for one final sign. A crack in the Mad King's armor. It came sooner than expected. One night during a court meeting, King Aerys announced something terrible. He planned to execute all political prisoners, including Eddard Stark, Stannis Baratheon, and even young hostages like Robb and Renly. He said they were poisoning the realm with rebellion in their blood. The court was silent. Even the Lannisters did not clap. But Prince Rhaegar stood up. "Father, we cannot do this. They have done nothing. They are children." The Mad King looked at him with wild eyes. "You sound like a traitor, boy, just like your mother." That moment, those words, were enough. Rhaegar knew the time had come. That night, he met with his loyal guards and gave the order. "We take the Red Keep. We stop him now, before it's too late." Sir Arthur Dayne nodded. So did Varys. In the shadows of King's Landing, quiet swords were being sharpened. At the same time, the Lords of the Vale, Riverlands, and Dorne began moving their pieces. Ravens flew with coded messages. Gold was passed to mercenaries. Ships began to sail from the southern coast. Even in the north, the silent wolf was stirring. Catelyn Stark sent a message through an old hunter loyal to her father. It reached Jon Arryn in a week. It simply said, "Winter is watching." The realm was ready. The fire had burned long enough. Now it was time for the shadows to rise, and deep in the Red Keep, where Wildfire slept under the stones, a prince with silver hair took his first step toward changing history. The night was dark in King's Landing, darker than ever before, but it was not the kind of darkness that brought sleep. It was the kind that comes before a storm, the kind that makes people lock their doors, the kind that makes soldiers tighten their swords and mothers hold their children close. The Mad King was planning a massacre. Tomorrow morning, by the king's order, the dungeons would open, not to set the prisoners free, but to bring them to their deaths. Lord Eddard Stark, Lord Stannis Baratheon, young Robb Stark, Renly Baratheon, all were to be executed in front of the Red Keep. A warning to the world. But tonight, someone else was moving in the shadows. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was ready. He stood with Sir Arthur Dayne and his loyal Kingsguard. He had Varys whispering into the ears of the guards. He had small folk moving quietly through the city, blocking doors, removing wildfire jars, clearing paths. It was the most dangerous night in Westeros, because if the plan failed, King's Landing would burn. The Mad King had already given secret orders to his pyromancers. If the Red Keep was attacked, if anyone rose against him, they were to light the wildfire and destroy the city. But Rhaegar was faster. He knew the Red Keep better than anyone. The secret paths, the forgotten tunnels, the hollow walls. While the Mad King sat on his iron throne, whispering to himself, Rhaegar and his men moved like ghosts. The first step was to free the prisoners. Sir Arthur Dayne led a small group of guards loyal to Rhaegar down into the dark dungeons. The guards who stood there were surprised, but they fell quickly. In the cold cells, Lord Eddard Stark looked up as the door opened. For a second, he thought it was his death. But then Sir Arthur said quietly, "Lord Stark, the prince sends his respects. You are free." Ned Stark had not smiled in years, but tonight a small fire of hope returned to his heart. Stannis Baratheon was freed next. Hard-eyed, thin, but unbroken. Young Robb and Renly were taken away from their prison rooms, wrapped in cloaks to hide their faces. The second step was to stop the wildfire. Varys had already sent his little birds to kill or capture the pyromancers hiding in the city. Many were caught. Some resisted. But the plan was working. The wildfire would not destroy the city tonight. Now came the hardest part. Facing the Mad King. Prince Rhaegar, dressed in his black armor with the red dragon of House Targaryen shining, on his chest, walked into the throne room of the Red Keep. The Iron Throne stood before him. Sharp, cold, built from 1,000 swords of old kings, and on it sat his father. King Aerys looked at Rhaegar with madness in his eyes. "You come to kill me, boy," he hissed. Rhaegar did not answer. He walked slowly, step by step, with his hand on his sword. Behind him stood Sir Arthur Dayne, Sir Oswell Went, and even some Lannister guards, sent secretly by Tywin Lannister, who had seen enough madness to last a lifetime. "I do not come for blood," Rhaegar said. "I come for peace." But the Mad King laughed. A terrible sound. "There is no peace in fire," he said. "Only ashes." And then, with his last act of madness, King Aerys tried to give the order. Burn them all, but it was too late. Rhaegar stepped forward and, with one clean strike of his sword, ended the reign of the Mad King. The room fell silent. The war was truly over. Not by rebellion, not by fire, but by a son stopping his father. The next morning, the bells of King's Landing rang, but not for death. They rang for a new king. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, now King Rhaegar the Früh, stood before the people of Westeros. He pardoned the rebels. He released Lord Eddard Stark and Stannis Baratheon. He sent Robb Stark back to Winterfell with honors. He promised to rebuild the Stormlands. He sent Elia Martell a message of peace and respect. He invited all the lords of the realm to meet him. And there, in the great hall of the Red Keep, he spoke simple words. "I am not my father." The lords listened. Even Tywin Lannister bowed his head. Doran Martell sent gifts. Jon Arryn promised loyalty. The North remained cautious, as wolves always do. But even Ned Stark admitted quietly to Catelyn, "Maybe this king will not burn the world." Years passed. Westeros slowly healed, but the scars of the Mad King's reign never left. People spoke of it for generations. The time when fear ruled. The time when the sky was filled with smoke. The time when a mad dragon almost burned the world, but also the time when a prince rose from the ashes and became a king of peace.